Hello, everyone. My name is Azeb Freitas. I am one of the co-hosts of the Freitas Effect podcast. Welcome to Conversations with Creatives. These episodes are brought to you in collaboration with Entropy Theater for Entropyfest, themed Emergence. Entropyfest is a celebration of local emergent artists in the New England area, and the Freitas Effect is serving as MCs on the weekends of May 20th to the 22nd and May 27th to the 29th. Ticket information is available in all of our social medias, as well as Entropy's social media platforms and in the description of these episodes. Here with me today, I have Nick and Holly, who I will allow to introduce themselves.
My name is Holly Stone. I'm a director, choreographer, dancer, filmmaker, etc. I do a lot of things, but I currently work as a full-time professional ballroom dancer through the Azeb Studios in Burlington, Massachusetts, as well as running my own dance company called Stoneworks Productions, which focuses on original narrative work for stage and screen.
My name's Nicholas Arango. I am a ballroom dance instructor as well, also with Arthur Murray. I've been dancing for a number of years. I don't have quite as many things going on as Holly does, but yeah, dance is kind of my thing, and I'm also a dance teacher.
Awesome. I'm also a dancer, so this is great. How did you guys find the world of dance, or what was your journey to like creative stuff and being an artist, if you identify as an artist?
Mm-hmm. So I found my way to dancing because a friend of mine just kind of took me out to a social dance like 12 years ago and fell in love with moving with other people almost right away. Then spent a lot of time doing it as a hobby and eventually decided I was going to go crazy and join the circus. So I quit my normal human job as a scientist and became a dance instructor and proceeded to just dive into the world of dance whole hog. Started with a couple of different things. I started off with contra dancing and then moved on into blues and swing, and then just kind of branched out and found everything else from there.
First of all, I love swing dancing. Swing dancing is very fun.
Wonderful.
Let me also super backtrack. Are you guys from Boston?
Not originally.
Okay, where are y'all from?
So I'm originally from Vermont. I have a very different sort of dance story to Nick.
Yes.
I started with classical ballet when I was a youngster and was in a very intense like pre-professional training program up until the point that I went to college. My parents were like, go get a real job. So I went to engineering school, and that's when I found ballroom and social dance as an 18-year-old in college. I kept dancing, teaching, performing, competing, choreographing on the side all the way up through graduation and my quote unquote normal person job as a chemical engineer for a couple of years, at which point I said, I can't do this anymore. And I quit my real person job and ran away and joined the circus, as Nick said. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, that was about 7 years ago at this point, I've been a full-time artist, dancer, choreographer, filmmaker, etc. And at this point, I primarily identify as a choreographer. I do still perform from time to time, as why we're here, but I mostly choreograph and direct musical theater, opera, concert dance, etc. I've lived in Vermont, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Florida, and now I live in the Boston area. And Nick?
I started out in New York and then the Boston area, so I didn't have as much of a change as Holly has had over the many years.
And so what brought y'all to Boston?
College. Many years ago, college, and then just stuck around afterwards.
Yeah, mine is a COVID story. So I was living in Florida before the pandemic, and I lost all my contracts to choreograph shows and whatnot in that week in March. And then my partner got a job in the Boston area, and here we went. And then that's when I started working for Arthur Murray. I used to work for the evil empire Fred Astaire as well. Now I work for the other evil empire, Arthur Murray. But yeah, I've only been here for about 1.5 years, whereas Nick has lived here for many years.
Yeah,
no, I just love to know like what brings people here and like why they stick around. So you both kind of mentioned having like a background in like science and engineering. So I just feel like it's interesting because usually there's like a contrast obviously between like being into the arts and the creative scene and then, you know, the very practicalism of like being a scientist or just like that world. But I feel like there's also a lot of things that correlate. Like, do you guys feel that way too?
Yeah, I very much feel like the art science divide is a false dichotomy. Actually, my master's thesis was about this. I have a master's of fine arts in dance, and my like final concert performance was about basically synthesizing ways of thinking as both an artist and an engineer. I definitely feel like from a choreographic standpoint, there's a lot of overlap with the design process as an engineer. So like imagining the big picture, narrowing down to the problem we're trying to solve at the time. What are the constraints of the problem in an engineering context? That's like, what are the materials? What is the shape of the thing I'm trying to create? How is it going to be used? In a choreographic context, it's, what's the size of the space? How many people do I have? What story am I trying to tell? What lighting options do I have? Like they're very similar like modes of problem solving. From a ballroom perspective, we find that this attracts a lot of very nerdy, very like analytically, rationally driven people because it's very rules based. Yep. And it's very rules based, and it's a way of interacting with another human that you don't really have to talk to anyone to do. So that tends to suit those types of people.
That's interesting because I totally get that, like also as a choreographer and dancer, and I've noticed that too, like when I used to go swing dancing, except I feel like the swing dancing world is a little bit scarier than the classical world just because of the element of like improv that can happen in the moment. But there is like also this sense of control. It's like, okay, we have this like 6-step and we're going to stick with this and you can turn me sometimes.
I actually find it to be almost the opposite of like your experience, because I came from the world of we're going to improvise and we don't know what's going to happen at all. And then coming into a space where it's like, you have to be here at this time and do this thing. To me, I'm just like, wait, how does that even work? And so I find that very amusing because it's the complete opposite experience of what I've had.
Yeah. I think it's just like the perspective of like, where's the freedom and where's the like, okay, we have to actually stick to the music.
And there's a pretty big learning curve. Speaking about like the ballroom world in particular, there's a pretty big learning curve for people who have a background similar to myself or who have no dance background coming in, to that idea of, if you do exactly what your partner tells you to, that will only take you so far. And when you eventually will get to a point, especially in like East Coast swing, Lindy Hop, blues fusion, West Coast swing, salsa, some of those other still like living, breathing social dances, that you have to get to a point where improvisation is part of the practice. And that takes a pretty significant like overcoming a barrier of fear on the part of a follower. Actually on every part of everybody really. And also like a mindset shift of like, okay, the structure of this, now find all the space within the structure.
Yes, no, that's very true. Because it's like you have to understand like the fundamentals before you can do all the fun stuff.
Without question, yes.
Yeah. All right. So I heard you mention, Holly, that you've done like musical theater stuff. So my next question was going to be, have you guys experimented with other forms of art, like, music, photography, poetry, whatever?
Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff thus far. I've worked with artists across a lot of different mediums. I collaborate regularly with composers to create music for my work. I've done a lot of musical theater. I've choreographed and directed a lot of musical theater, which is very collaborative because it's such a big, like there's lots of tech people involved. And I've done some work with like art galleries and whatnot. So that's sort of like responding to visual art as a way of working. In the ballroom world, it's a little different. It tends to be that the dance itself is the thing that's prioritized even over the music in some instances. There's a lot of the ballroom, like studio franchise world tends to impose a lot of kind of artificial constraints on the amount of time you have to present something. And so that requires us to jump through a lot of hoops to find the right music or the right sound score to like fit within those constraints.
Yeah. How about you, Nick?
I haven't really done much outside of dancing when it comes to artistic stuff. I drew as a kid, but I think that hardly counts. So
you've done a lot of stuff with live music though.
Live music?
Yeah.
I mean, I hang out with live musicians a lot. That's true.
There's a lot of work with live musicians. He's underselling himself.
So what are you guys going to be presenting at Entropyfest?
Yeah. So we are creating a kind of a ballroom parody piece. I know it's maybe difficult to tell, but I'm about half Nick's size. I'm a very small person. I'm under 5 feet, and I also identify as non-binary. And that has made my life particularly interesting in the ballroom world, which is a world that's very set on gender binaries and on a particular image of kind of a tall, lean, sexy people. And so we are taking those and trying to poke a bunch of holes in that, and are playing with the ideas of difference in physical size and in so we say muddling the gender binary to make people chuckle and think about why the status quo is the way that it is. Like an accurate way to describe it.
I think it's pretty accurate. There's also, I think, an element of a lot of the times ballroom dancers have this opinion of like, I am correct. And we're going to be hooking a lot at that as well. Both of us are going to be doing things that are technically right, but by ignoring our partner, which is sort of the entire point of the dance, it's gonna create some very interesting images.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited. That is really cool. I was actually speaking with another artist who's going to be presenting at Entropyfest, and their piece is also related to commenting just on the dynamics of gender in the like dance world. And I think, like I mentioned with her in her interview, that this is like really such a big topic right now, and just like should have been for a long time. And I think it's really cool that like people are actually talking about it now and like using art as a form of expression to like really lay it out there. So cheers to y'all. That is dope. And I think it's going to be really cool to see how you pull this off.
Thanks. Yeah, it's our existence, or my existence in particular, in the ballroom world has been kind of complicated. There is a lot of like same-sex ballroom spaces outside of the franchise ballroom world. Especially like queer Argentine tango is a really big scene, especially this area in New York City and whatnot. But queer, gender non-conforming people tend to get pushed out of the studio system pretty quickly. And I don't know if that just means I'm a masochist or I am stubborn as heck, but I think it's a little both. It's probably a little both. Have decided to sort of stick around and see what I can do from the inside. And there's not a ton of people like me who exist in this world. And so we are actually presenting a much shorter version of what we're hoping to do at Entropy next weekend at a franchise event in front of everyone we work with. So it will be very interesting to get the insider's view of the exploration of these ideas, as then having slightly more of an outsider's view later.
Right. Like a little preview.
Yes.
Awesome. Also, like even the height stuff too. I mean, my experience as a tall person is way more like I always get put in the back when people are choreographing, but I'm also just like, it's whatever, I'm used to it. But no, I totally feel you. And especially like as someone who's not really deeply involved in the like world of social dance, that's definitely something like I don't think about at all. So that'll be cool to like see that contrast as well. So my next question is there anything else you guys are working on that you're excited about that might be like out by the time Entropyfest is happening, or before or after?
Probably might have one or two things going on.
Yeah. So as I hinted earlier, I am in the process of getting my own dance company up off the ground. It's called Stoneworks Productions, and we focus on making original narrative work for stage and screen. So as I mentioned, I like native language as a dancer is ballet, and I've been working for the past couple of years on a full-length original narrative work called The Queen of Nori. And it's got a long kind of complicated COVID history, but the long and short of it is that we had workshop performances in the Boston area last summer, and we are coming to the Boston Center for the Arts the second weekend of May. So we will be in the Boston Center for the Arts performing 4 performances. The 12th, 13th, and 14th of May. And it's a massive project. It's been something I've been working on for a long time, and really like, again, thinking about social justice and dance and moving the needle on like who gets to tell stories and how it features I should give you the pitch. Queen of Nori is an original story ballet that follows a queen who turns to dark magic to save her kingdom from war with neighboring powers. So the idea is that we're using fantasy and fantasy trappings to talk about contemporary issues, and in opening the umbrella, I guess, on who gets to be a lead character in a story ballet. In this particular case, it's an older female dancer with something of the gravitas of like Hamlet, King Lear, Macbeth, essentially not playing a 16-year-old and getting to tell her own story. So that is the big project that I'm working on right now. Again, we're gonna have 4 performances at Boston Center for the Arts the second weekend of May. We have 1 performance the last weekend of June at Windover Center for the Performing Arts. And then we're going to Hawaii in September.
Cool.
So
For vacation.
all...
No, I'm just kidding.
No, for producing. I'm
Good.
actually going to Hawaii, oh my God, in like 3 weeks to do auditions. So
Cool.
we're producing 8 shows in 2 states this year, and it's kind of surreal. It's actually incredibly surreal.
That's freaking amazing.
Thanks.
You're welcome. You're gonna be real busy in May.
Yeah, I am. He's laughing because it's true.
Yep.
I'm already real busy, but yes.
Yeah.
Like right now we're ramping down because of our showcase, and Holly is currently in the middle of ramping down while also ramping up in a different direction.
Yeah. But it's good. We like being busy, you know?
Yes, we do. I mean, it's I feel like a lot of people when the lockdown happened in 2020, I saw a lot of people have the like, oh, this not working so much thing is really nice. Like I can like maybe step back from what I was doing and take some more time for myself. I had exactly the opposite effect. I realized, oh, I am exactly as much of a workaholic as I thought I was, and this is terrible. So now that and like again, all my everything I had was canceled as for everyone in the performing arts, and we were on the brink of presenting a like workshop version of Queen of Nori like in April of 2020. Obviously that didn't happen, and so I like really thought it was never gonna see the stage. And then once I moved to the Boston area later in 2020, I ended up restarting the project virtually. So we started doing Zoom rehearsals to do choreographic research and movement development and so on and so forth. And then we were able to present it for a live audience in front of people, like 100 people in July of 2021. And so I'm like, this train is not stopping. We're going to ride this all the way as far as it's going to go.
Yeah, no, I feel you 100%. Like just first of all, it can be hella traumatizing to be working on a project and like I'm going to present this. And then it's like, welp, nope. And you're like, I don't think I ever want to touch this ever again, you know? And then you're like, will it, and you put so much work into it. And then you're like, will this ever actually be seen? And then after you're able to like process and breathe, you're like, okay, maybe I can actually do this. So
yeah, I basically couldn't look at any of it for like 6 to 8 months at that point because I just hurt too much. But moving to a new space, working with a new group of people mostly, and like the connections and collaborations that sort of blossomed out of that have been really magical. And I'm sort of continued to be pleasantly surprised at like the audience reception that we've gotten to the show. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to have a good showing at Boston Center for the Arts and then beyond. But it's been a wild ride for sure. Nick has been cursorily involved.
Yes.
As a stage door person.
Yes.
And moral support while I try to do 800 things at once.
Mostly, hey Holly, have you eaten today? Because you should have some food. That'd be great.
And we need that. We need a lot of that. Yes. We love support and we love love. Speaking of love, are you guys together or are you guys just like dance partners?
The eternal question.
Also, I don't know if that's a problematic question. So
actually, kind of.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
Actually.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
It's a normal problematic question.
It's a normal problematic question.
I was gonna say, I'm sure you get asked this all the time because you like, run a whole ballroom thing together.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of like assumption that people make about when you dance really close to someone for extended periods of time, that like also that must turn into a romantic connection. I've been in the professional ballroom world for 10 years at this point almost. I've had like easily a dozen partners, and the vast majority of those are not romantic connections. Now, it is definitely a thing that you do find, like a lot of especially high level pros end up like marrying their competitive partner, or at least are involved with their competitive partner for a while, just because that's who you spend all your time with.
Yeah.
And it's like a very all-consuming experience. But it is also totally possible to be a platonic thing. One of the magical things about especially sort of improvisational social dance is that you get to make a connection with somebody for 3 minutes and then you move on.
Yeah.
I have become known within my dance scene for going, oh, that was really sexy and awesome. High five, well done. And then like just walking off in the other direction, because like dancing is dancing. It can be sexy, it can be fun, it can be flirty, it could be everything and anything you want in a relationship. And then when the song ends, you go, okay, great, thank you. Hope to see you next week.
Yeah.
Not necessarily meaning a thing.
Yeah, like boundaries, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But also in our job, we teach, I would say, majority heterosexual couples, which are split probably 50-50-ish between older retired couples who are like looking for something new to do together, or getting back, shall we say, to an old hobby that they used to do together, and then wedding couples. So we get people who've been together for a really long time, and then we get people who are like just starting to be together. And those are different dynamics. But again, like their experience of it is very much like, oh, this is the thing that I do with the person I'm romantically attached to. And the dance is sort of an expression of that. There's multitudes.
It's really funny. I was listening to this other podcast, and they were talking about like how they think that people who have to teach choreographed wedding pieces to like couples that are getting married, like that must be the worst job in the world, because you have to like make sure that like the partner's not gonna like be like, I'm not going to the wedding, I don't know the dance moves, I'm gonna panic and like freak out, and she's gonna leave me, or like he's gonna leave me, or they're gonna leave me. It's just like,
that's like a low-key version of our daily lives, actually.
Okay, so I was
like, it doesn't get that extreme.
Actually, that scary? No.
But like we literally, like, that is what we, at least once a week, I am teaching 1 or 2 wedding couples, and like we've mostly moved on to like the more experienced dancers, but we have like teachers who spend almost all their time teaching wedding couples how to like do their dance, get up there. One partner is usually way more nervous than the other.
Yeah.
And like half the job is just being like, no, you're doing fine. It's okay. Breathe, just dance. Out. You can do all the things, I promise you. And we kind of tailor it to the particular couple. So you have somebody with a lot of experience, it's a little bit more. Somebody with less experience, maybe it's just a couple of basic steps to like not panic when they have to do the dance in front of people.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really telling, actually, like what their relationship is, like what their dynamics are as a couple from how they interact, because people come to partner dancing with kind of a lot of assumptions, both from a gender perspective and from like a role perspective. And dancing either reinforces that or subverts it in some way.
There's the number of times I have a couple come in and the woman is the more forceful one, this heterosexual couple. Right. And she's like very take charge and very like, yes, I'm like, I decide the things. And the guy's just like, yeah, I'm here because she wants to be here. And we're like, okay, would you like to lead instead of him? Oh, no, I would never. And it's just like the heteronormativity and the gender roles have just come into play so strong that it subverts how their dynamic actually works. And they want to present that very traditional, the man is in charge, the woman follows, like way of moving. And it's like, there's nothing about dancing, partner dancing, that implies that a man must lead and a woman must follow, not even in the slightest.
No, I totally feel you. Like me and my best friend would go dancing and she'd lead or I'd lead and we just like switch.
Yeah, it's great. And that like unlocks so many awesome, fun things you can do in your dancing when you switch off who leads, who follows, especially if you do it mid-dance. You can do some very, very impressive things, which might be another hint of a preview of what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. It's so interesting. Yeah, just the different like assumptions and isms that people come to the table with. I really hope we're like starting to get to the point, just barely, but I really hope with the studio and the sort of special cast of characters we have at this studio in particular, we can get to a point where regardless of who, like the identity of the couple that walks in, we can be like, okay, who wants to lead and who wants to follow? And that's a genuine question, as opposed to like, oh, he gets to, because like that's what we do things, right? But a lot of times that's not what people are either best suited for or what they actually want, but they just feel like they need to do it a certain way because of the image that the ballroom dance world has presented itself for so long, and with the kind of traditional gender roles that are still lingering in the water, if you will.
Right. Like assumed that the woman's going to follow and the man's going to lead, just because that's what things have been for ever in terms of like the dance community and world of roles. And it's like, it really should just be like personality based.
Yes.
Yeah. And ability.
Yeah.
And we do have some same-sex couples as well. And those are the situations that really start to break the assumptions, right? Because they walk in and then we're like, all right, who wants to do what?
Right.
And I'm like, why is it that we ask them that and not
everybody,
a heterosexual couple? Because like,
I mean, it could be awakening for straight people to be asked that question.
Yep.
It can be like, wait.
It can.
Let's call off the wedding. No, I'm just kidding. Has that but has that ever happened to y'all? Like you're working with a couple and they actually like call the wedding off?
I haven't had that happen.
I have only seen that once. And it was like, this is when I was in Florida, and there was other things going on in addition to the dancing that made that happen. And I have to be frank, I only saw them like twice, so I don't know much of the whole story, but I did see it once. I feel like it tends to, honestly, optimistically, it actually tends to go reasonably well. It is a form of like relationship therapy almost, because learning a new skill together as adults like is both a really kind of humbling and eye-opening experience, especially if it's something new to both partners in the relationship. It teaches you a lot about how you interact with your partner and teaches you a lot about how you yourself are as a human. And I find generally it improves their connection and feelings of like intimacy and working together as a relationship. Not all the time, but most of the time, that's generally what I see. And there's the sense of accomplishment, especially if one or both of them are kind of nervous about it. You know, part of our job is to make sure that they're comfortable and prepared for their event. And like, we have lots of strategies to help them deal with that. And again, generally we find that when we have their last lesson before we send them off to their wedding, that people are generally like, we did the thing, like we're ready. And that's like the most adorable thing in the entire world.
I also think it's really funny on a dance lesson, for some reason, pretty quickly people's barriers come down. Normally, like if a couple like has like a fighting dynamic, like they put that under wraps when they're in public, and it's very like formal, very like, no, we would never. And immediately, as soon as they start dancing, if they bicker, the bickering comes out, the finger pointing comes out, and you really get to see like what a couple is actually like. Even though you see them only like once a week for a couple of weeks, you really get to like, oh, this is your guys' like whole thing. All right. And like you accidentally end up poking a little bit of it. Like Holly was saying, it's dance therapy. It's like couples therapy. They're dancing and you're like, hey, maybe you like lay off of her for a bit. Let her figure it out. Like you can work through this, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I was going to ask y'all, like, do you feel like you kind of fall into this facilitator role where you're just like really trying to mend this relationship or just redirect them to make each other better?
Once in a while, but not, it's not really like the main thing. Most of the time people are here, they're pretty good, but like there have been a handful of times where it has to be like, hey, like maybe lay off of him, let him figure out the step, and then he'll come back to you and it'll be all good after that.
Yeah, it's sort of, it has to be kind of veiled and under the guise of like, well, we're talking about dancing, but really we're talking about the fact that like you won't stop telling him what to do. So, you know, we get, as doing this full time, we get pretty good at being like, hey, so I'm noticing when he does this, you do this. Maybe we should try doing this instead. And I find generally people are smart enough to realize that you're not just talking about the dancing.
Yeah.
And especially the older couples who have been together for a long time will be like, oh yeah, this is because we do this, like this is
our
just
thing.
our thing.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. But yeah, there is sort of an element of, I don't really want to use the word therapy, but definitely of kind of steering people being more like compassionate partners for each other overall.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, y'all are fantastic teachers, honestly, because I'm 100% sure that like not everybody gets that kind of experience, you know, like to be able to be like aware and like read the room of like the dynamics between whoever you're teaching. That's a skill that takes a long time to like build, or you're just innately an empathetic person and you can like read things. So like for real.
Holly is very firmly pointing at me now. Okay.
Anybody who's working with y'all is lucky to have y'all, because
thank you.
It's not easy to find like a good teacher, you know. Alrighty then. So where can we find your work and how can people support you?
I mean, obviously come see the show, Entropyfest, in May. This actually be our first time performing as a partnership outside of the franchise world. So I'm very excited about that. As for my sort of broader work, you can follow Stoneworks Productions on Instagram and Facebook. And the website for our current show, The Queen of Nori, is thequeenofnori.com, where you can find updates on casting and media and updates for future fundraising and whatnot. As I mentioned already, we will be having shows at Boston Center for the Performing Arts the second weekend of May. Ticket sales aren't currently live, but they will be probably within 3 weeks. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll have another show, Windover Center for the Performing Arts in Rockport, in the 26th of June. So if you're interested in my work in particular, which is more concert dance and narrative dance theater material, that's what's currently on tap. Mm-hmm. We do have a bunch of plans to make some like ballroom dance film stuff, because that's a niche that has yet really to be filled in the screen dance world at large, but none of that exists outside of our own brains at this point.
Mm-hmm. How do you spell Nori?
Nori.
Is there going to be a performance of that in Hawaii?
Yeah, we're going to have 3 performances at Polyku Theater in Honolulu. That will be, see if I can pull the dates out of my head, the 16th, 17th, and 18th of September. Also, ticket sales are not live for that either because it's in September, but it will be Polyku Theater, 3 performances in Honolulu. We're having auditions the 2nd and 3rd of April. So if you are a dancer and you know anyone in Hawaii, feel free to hit me up on Instagram or at Stoneworks Productions. Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. I definitely have learned a lot already about producing something in a different state than I live, because that is a whole adventure.
And then in terms of if somebody wanted to do ballroom classes with y'all, is that through Arthur Murray?
Yep. We work at the Arthur Murray Studio in Burlington. It's on Middlesex Turnpike. You can look them up on Facebook. AM Burlington, I think, is the handle. And you will get us or one of our lovely coworkers.
Absolutely.
To take you on our dance adventure.
You will see us. Just look for the 5'10" and 4'10" humans dancing together in the corner. Yes. You will definitely see the 2 of us.
And then my super last question. What advice do you have for emerging artists?
My instinct is to say do everything, by which I mean like absorb as much media of stuff that you like, stuff that you don't like, both in the medium that you want to create art in, as well as others. There's so much that is to be learned about like craft and composition and storytelling, whether or not you're telling like a legible narrative story or not, from watching how other people do it. I definitely you don't need formal training, quote unquote, although it definitely is a sort of expedited route, whether that's like a BFA program or a high school program or post-grad program, but really just absorb as much as you can and analyze how other people are doing the thing. That for me has been great training in how to create things that do what I want them to do. And if you don't like something, like ask yourself, why don't you like it? Is it a subject matter thing? Is it a composition thing? I find a lot of times when I don't like something, it's because it sets up an expectation and doesn't fulfill the expectation. And so there's learning to be had in that space, but do everything is my short answer.
I feel like I'm actually more of an emerging artist in this moment as well. So I'm just sort of going through it and, looking around and trying to do everything, as Holly is saying, and just absorb as much information as possible. So I think finding somebody who has been through it before and has done all of the things in the past to kind of help you out with your emergence is not the worst idea. At the very least, finding and talking and communicating with other people who do what you're trying to do, to get their perspective and help, asking questions is never a bad thing. The worst you can get is that I don't want to answer that.
Amazing. All right, y'all. Well, that's the end. We made it here. Thank you so much for talking with me this morning before you have a whole day of work. And I'm again super excited to see y'all perform. Anybody who's listening, you better get your goddamn tickets. And we will see you in May. All right, y'all. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks for chatting with us.